Well, hey there. Welcome back. So, wanted to do something today. I was inspired earlier this morning by a conversation that I was having with a candidate. We were getting his info prepped and ready to get sent over to a new opportunity. And there's something that he brought up that reminded me of something that I think is really good advice to share. We were specifically discussing the topic of what to include and what not to include in his resume. Now, understand that this is a resume tip that is very specific to technical resumes, to people who work in technical fields. And that was actually one of the things that we discussed was he was essentially saying that he had experience working with particular tools but didn't feel as though they were resume worthy of inclusion, right? And that's something I understand. I understand you don't want to misrepresent yourself. You don't want to claim that you are capable of things that you are not. And that's kind of one of the important pieces of looking at technical jobs versus, say, working in like a sales capacity, right? So a lot of what I do in my role would be kind of considered within the sales realm, just identifying candidates, working them through the process, There's nothing that can be, or there's not much, rather, that could be very decisively defined within the context of what I do outside of results, okay? So the whole concept of fake it till you make it, I can get away with that. And kind of, people who do what I do can do that. Obviously, if you don't deliver at a certain point, you're going to be proven to be a fraud. But for technical jobs, if you're going in to be a developer, systems admin, doing whatever, and you claim, hey, I know this language, or I've worked with this tool, or whatever, you will be brought to task on that. At some point, you will have to prove that you know what you're doing with it. And so you don't want to put it on a resume and then get basically caught in a lie down the road, right? So that's correct, although here's kind of what he and I were talking about. There were some tools that he had some limited exposure to, he had worked with, he was familiar with, but he didn't consider himself to be particularly skilled or have a lot of expertise in them. And so what we discussed was, when you're filling out a resume, if you're a tech professional and you're doing that, one of the things that a lot of people are going to do to find you, or to use as first level review if you're applying to a job and it goes through an HR screening, or basically anything that gets you from the application process to the interview process, there's going to be a lot of searching the resume for buzzwords. There just is. Especially at the recruiter level, at the HR level, and also remembering what the fundamental purpose of the resume is. The resume is all just an attempt to get the interview, right? So that's your ticket to the interview. And so all you're trying to do is raise enough attention, enough awareness, or enough interest to get in the door and then sit across the table from the person who makes the final decision, okay? So what we discussed was taking and including everything that he could include, and using sort of the litmus test of, have you legitimately worked with this tool in a professional context, even if to a small amount, because anything that can be added to it can essentially become an SEO tool, really. And in fact, I saw someone's resume the other day where they literally referenced it as SEO terms on their resume, which I think is a little bit cynical of a way of positioning it. And full disclosure, I did change that on the resume before sending it to a client of mine. I called it skills summary instead. But the fact remains that SEO term is kind of accurate. Now, what you end up having to do is you take the terms, you take the skills, you make sure that they're included, so that if someone does a Control F on your resume, it's going to come up. If they're running a Boolean search, it's going to come up. It exposes you to more opportunities, or ensures that you don't get missed on certain searches for jobs that you would be fully qualified for, where maybe that is like 2% of the job is working with this one tool that you have enough skill with, even if you don't feel like you're particularly strong in it. So now, how do you do that without misrepresenting yourself? In the context of the resume, when you're breaking down your roles, when you're kind of going through the bullet points of here's exactly what I did, reference those tools, talk about exactly how much you worked with them, talk about exactly the level of depth that you have with them. Make sure that you're reflecting correctly what you've done, so then you can never be called a task on it. They can never say, oh, it says here that you've got X amount of C# experience, but we don't really see that. And you no, I said exactly how much C# experience I have. I said exactly how much depth I have with it. So you're not misrepresenting yourself at all. But you are making sure to open as many doors as possible. Now, some people might disagree with that. If you disagree with that, let me know why. I would love to kind of get into it. The discussions that I've had, I've come to the conclusion that my thinking on it is correct. I'm open to ideas of why I'm wrong. And especially if you're in an HR capacity, if you're a hiring manager or something, and you have a reason why that's a bad idea, please let me know. But to everybody else, I've had great success in making that suggestion. It's worked. It seems like a very good idea. So that's a resume tip for the day. Once again, anybody who's job seeking, please reach out. Would love to offer any more of this type of advice. I've got lots of these. That's just the one for today. Happy to share as many of those as you need, and happy to have that conversation, and would love to connect with you. Thanks.